Hello, sports fans, and welcome to the Weekend Eve. This is Any Given Sunday on KUAW. 816-599-6893 is the phone number if you want to speak your piece or if you have any questions. Tonight, we have a guest. Now, first, Coach 24, Darwin Penny. He is still playing baseball down in Arizona and Florida, as he is not here tonight, but he is getting the Royals better, and we are looking forward to a great season. And behind the scenes, running the show, DJ Scatter, George Walker. Mr. Walker, how are you doing tonight?
We're doing just fine over on this end.
Oh, that's great. And tonight, I have guest host Marvin Durant. Marvin, how are you doing this evening?
I'm doing well, Brian. Thank you so much for having me once again. Good to be back with you.
Man, thank you for coming on to the show. And I have breaking news. I am finally in the land of the living because last week I was not feeling good, so we did not have a show. We just had a rerun of the previous week with Darian Thomas. And we'll talk a little later about how you can still get those 58 for 58 buttons or T-shirts from him. And so we're going to get into this right now. So, football season's over, and usually you think that there's nothing going on. But actually, there is quite a bit going on. We've got the NCAA basketball tournament, and we have the men's, and Kansas – it is so funny because they have lost like 3 games in a row, and they've only dropped from like 7 to 16, and they turned around and they have lost their last 2 games by 50 points. You would think that was Missouri playing.
So true, and we'll get into my Tigers a little later, but again, this has been a very tough year for the Jayhawks. I knew when we started adding new teams to the league, Houston being one of them, and that KU's reign was going to go away. Now, yes, they've had some injuries. I don't think this team is as good as past teams, but nevertheless, they have had better competition this year, and it has shown. So I'm not surprised that what's happening with Kansas has happened. Oklahoma, Texas, both lost in the Big 12 tournament. Good. It's your last year. Don't let the door kick you on the you-know-what on the way out, okay?
Absolutely.
And I am just so very proud of Coach Kelvin Sampson and the Houston Cougars for what they're doing. They're number one not only in the Big 8, but number one overall in the country. I do expect them to be a number 1 seed in the tournament. They were winning big earlier today, and so I'm very happy. 6 teams that the Big 12 has in the top 25. That's pretty good.
Absolutely. And so Texas Tech, which is I'm kind of a fan favorite because a friend of mine who I bowl with, his daughter is on the drill team, so she got to go down there to the T-Mobile Center. I always want to say the Sprint Center.
Yes.
And it should still be the Sprint Center. But anyway, they beat BYU. BYU is 20th ranked. Texas Tech is 25th ranked. And so Texas Tech is won 81-67. So they get to play tomorrow. So she gets to dance one more time. And my friend gets to watch her dance one more time. So that's awesome. And Houston, they turned around and beat TCU 60-45. So they will advance. I do not know who they will be playing. Let's see. Right now they don't have it set up, and we'll get it figured out. But you are right. You've got 6 teams in the top 25. You have 9 teams that they've already said that could make the big dance, and possibly even 11 teams in the Big 12. Arguably the toughest and best conference this year.
Yes, and I understand that the Commissioner, Brett Yormark, said that expansion could be on the way for the NCAA tournament. It's at 64 teams right now. Many moons ago, it was 48. They moved to 64. It was a hue and cry then. People are already complaining that 64 to 76 is too much, and I'm one of them. 64 is fine. We do not need to appease the bigger conferences. The Big 12, perfect example. They're doing well this year. They have better competition. It is parity in the Big 12. There is parity in college basketball as a whole. There are no more blue blood conferences. Yes, blue blood teams based upon long traditions, okay? But trust me, the Big Ten is not an overbearing, dominant conference in basketball. The SEC certainly isn't in college basketball. ACC is still strong, but they're not the dominant force anymore. Right. If anybody is a dominant force right now, is the Big 12, and I still don't think people see them as a dominant force. Again, they are full of parity.
Yep.
So this expansion to 76, and I hope it doesn't happen, but it probably will, because dollar signs are involved in this, as it always is. Let's face it, gambling is part of this.
Right.
They just passed sports betting in North Carolina, and you can bet on North Carolina State. You can bet on the Tar Heels.
And Duke.
So money plays a part in all of this, but just in pure competition, we don't need 76 teams.
No, what I consider is you do 64 teams in the NCAA tournament. You do 64 teams in the NIT. That's 128 teams. You don't need more than that. Now, if you can't make the top half or the top 40%, then you don't need to be there. It's almost to the point that in Missouri, as bad as they are this year, they've only won 2 games since they were they were like 6-4, and then around Thanksgiving, and they've only won 2 games, and now is 8 and 25. You might as well put them in there. But that's ridiculous, and to me, it's really, you want parity, but you don't want things watered down.
No, you don't, because then that's the other side of the coin. I mean, if you start adding some more teams, possibly you'll get some teams from some of the lower conferences, the mid majors, and again, I would love to see them, but then again, you start seeing teams that are close to 500. I mean, I believe the threshold is usually about 25 victories to get in. I mean, you're going to see people with 16, 17, 18 wins getting into the tournament, and that's not what this tournament is all about.
No, it's not. And ever since it went to 64, I believe it was like in 1981. It was right after Bird and Magic in 1979. Then they turned around and they made it to 64. It was perfect. And I still think it's perfect. Sometimes you don't need to mess with things. And a lot of people, and there's a lot of hands, and usually they say too many hands or too many cooks spoil the broth. And this is one of those things. I like the 64. You get the best 64, you're going to get people who are not going to get in, and they're not going to like it. Boo-hoo, you
Right,
know?
exactly.
Give them a crying towel and tell them to go home. But saying that, but here's the other thing that I see with the men's basketball. For the first time, and it started with last year, the women's team is taking the front stage over the men's team.
Yes.
I used to, it didn't matter, you know, I had a major crush on Pat Summitt
Yes.
at Tennessee, and
Yes.
she had phenomenal teams. Shamika Holtz-Claw, even down from Tiffany Woosley in the 80s, and Candace Parker, and you could just keep going and going.
Yes.
But they were always still the second feature to the men.
Yeah.
Not this year, because you've got Caitlin
Yeah.
Clark and you've got Angel Reese, and they are the big names.
Yeah, Juju Watkins from USC, the heralded freshman.
Absolutely. And so I can't hardly name any players. I only know one guy, and it's from Kansas, and that's because he's always hurt. That's how I always remember it. But the women are starting to take over, and now maybe it won't after Clark and Reese leave and go into the WNBA, because, you know, this is her last season.
Yes.
But are you going to pay thousands of dollars for a seat to a men's basketball game? I don't care who's playing, whether it's Duke, North Carolina, Kansas, and Missouri, or whoever.
Yeah, no, I'm not.
I'm
Again,
not.
I don't know, like you. I know very few people, a couple names on Kansas, the guys who are injured
Yep.
and who are not playing. I think he plays for Kansas State. And the only reason why I know his name, because he has the same name of a famous producer, director, Tyler Perry.
Oh, that's right. That's right. I just listened to him today.
And there's a guy from Duke who got ran over during the court storming situation.
Oh,
And we may want to get into that, because I have some strong feelings about that. But again, nobody knows who all these guys
No.
are. They're not household names. And a part of it is, well, they're not marketing very well. That's number one. And number two, you know, you have a lot of one and dones, two and dones. So they're just there for a hot second.
yep.
And unless you're sitting by the TV every Tuesday and Friday and maybe Saturday afternoon watching them, you don't know who they are.
No.
Sports talk radio doesn't talk college basketball very much in this market.
No.
I mean, there are games. You got the K-State games on one station, KU on another, but in terms of sports talk, nobody's talking about them.
No, absolutely. And Kansas has had their worst year since 1988, 1989, when Roy Williams took over the Kansas program after Larry Brown violated NCAA rules, and they weren't allowed to participate in the NCAA, but he went 6-8, and that was the last time that the Kansas Jayhawks had lost 8 games. Now, I could care less about Kansas, and I don't hate them. I just don't like them. But saying that, they have always had a winner. And so even after that, Roy Williams had them winning, and then Bill Self had them winning. But this year, they have had 8 losses, with the fact that they had, a new league, virtually a new league. I mean, it may be the same number or name as the Big 12,
Right.
but it's still a bunch of new teams. You got guys coming from the East Coast and the West Coast, and they're coming in, and they're really making a statement with that. So Kansas is going to have to step up their game in order to stay as the top dog in the Big 12.
That is true. Now, Oklahoma and Texas goes bye-bye,
Right.
of course, after this year. Coming in next year,
Right.
there's Arizona, which always has a top 10 program.
Right.
You have Arizona State.
Yep.
Colorado is no slouch.
Yep.
Utah is no slouch. And you have Utah State. So, again, more competition. And now KU, again, is going to have to fight in recruiting. Because if these teams are coming in, playing very well, being very competitive, it's like, okay, we don't need to go to Kansas. We don't care what happened when Danny Manning played, okay?
Right.
We don't care anything about that.
Wait, who?
Yeah,
Who's Danny Manning?
exactly, exactly. So, and you have to see, and again, it's what have you done for me lately?
Right.
And so, if all of these new teams come in, play very well, we still have existing teams in the conference playing well. Iowa State ranked what, 7th?
Yep.
How?
Yeah.
Why? How? Why? Yeah. Where do they come from? Who are these guys?
Mm-hmm.
So when you have stuff like that going on, it makes great competition. So I think Kansas's reign as the top dog in the Big 12 is pretty much over with. Will they still be contenders? Absolutely. As long as Bill Self is there, he's going to crank them out. But it's not going to be as easy.
Yeah, absolutely. So now we were talking about how people charged the court after a upset win, and the Duke player got hurt, which looked really bogus. I mean, yeah, he got hit a little bit, but Jay Bias, I'm not a big fan of him anyway, but because it was Duke, he was crying about, well, we can't do this anymore. They've been rushing the courts forever since we were young kids.
Yes, and even before.
And nobody has ever listened to them complain about anything. Now, all of a sudden, it's, oh, my goodness, man, we can't do this.
They did it in pro ball. How many championships have we seen, championship reels of the Celtics winning on the parquet floor and everybody rushing? That's no big deal. Back in the 50s, early 60s, they stormed baseball fields, okay? So this is nothing new. Now, only reason why it's big this year, again, because it happened to a player at Duke, and it also happened to Caitlin Clark. Ohio State beat them.
Right.
They ran on. They stormed the court. She got knocked down. Now, I also heard that she faked a lot of that, too.
Right. There was a lot. I saw that, and I saw it from different angles, and it almost looked like she caused it more than the other person. So it's almost to the point that everybody is so sensitive.
Yes.
You can't say anything. You have to say everything right. And if you don't, you have to be PC. I was a big Ralphie May fan, and he was never politically correct, but man, he was politically right. Yeah. And so, saying stuff, and we're getting into where everybody has to be right and everybody has to be sensitive, and you have to really, if somebody falls and scrapes their knee, it's almost like you have to give them candy, you have to give them ice cream, you have to give them a new car, a toy car, you have to give them all these things just to make them feel better. Oh my God, grow up, because the real world, the real world was supposed to not be easy, but now everybody's trying to make it so super easy. And they're kind of finding out the wrong way that it's not.
That is true. Now, what upsets me about Jay Billis's comments, he was talking about kids should be prosecuted. Now, first of all, who's going to have time to have the Zabruta tapes, okay, and figure out who these kids are and then start leveling fines or sanctions or again, prosecuting? Don't you think that these guys who are lawyers, who are DAs, don't you think they have other things to do than trying to hand down fines and sanctions against some kids who are being kids? We forget these kids are between the ages of 18 and 23. They're kids,
right? And
they're celebrating. It's not that big of a deal. Now, can security in these arenas do a better job of security? Probably so.
Right.
They could probably put in better measures. Can the teams do a better job of maybe getting off the floor quicker?
Right.
Sure, try that. But you can't stop these kids from coming on the court. You go to a football game, like I don't think it was this year or a couple years ago, KU had a big win there in David Booth Stadium in Lawrence. They came on the field, stormed the field, took the goalpost back to the dorm.
Right, exactly.
And so, which is
that's
normal.
Happened. How many times does that happen? Almost every time somebody rushes the field. And here's the other thing. Maybe you can even say, well, if the team is, if the team that's favored is down enough points where you're not going to, you're not going to like win by shooting a shot. So if you're down 5-10 points, get your players off the court, and you can put in backup and all that and let them handle it. Or you can even say, look, give them time to get off the court, take a minute to rush off the court, because I see them rushing at halftime to go run to the court, because I guarantee you, if the coach is not angry or not happy with their performance, they're telling them to get their hindquarters into the locker room so they can talk to them. You can do that there, and then the kids can rush on there.
Yeah.
So you can always adjust and make adamants on it to make it work. But the thing of it is that, you're trying to take away all the fun. Like the NFL, not for long,
Exactly.
no fun league.
Exactly.
And stuff like that. And, you try always say, well, I want my kids to be kids. But then at the same time, you want them to be multimillionaires, too, by the time they're 15 years old. You want them to be Justin Bieber and all that. And the, like, Leif Garrett. Yeah. I am going old school with that.
Oh, very much old school.
But you get my point.
Yes.
You're trying to get these kids to grow up faster than they can. And so when we were growing up in our time, let them be kids. And then we turn around and we become productive citizens and no trouble, or a little bit of trouble, but still. But it's totally just ridiculous to hear all this now.
Yeah, it is. And everybody has a comment about things. And we talked a little bit about women's basketball, college basketball a few moments ago. The big story of the weekend, or I guess the first part of this week, was the finale of the SEC Women's Championship game between LSU and South Carolina. Now, of course, South Carolina is #1 team in the land, undefeated. LSU is the reigning national champions. You got Angel Reese, you got Kim Mulkey, best player coach combination. You have Dawn Staley, one of the great female coaches, not so much female coaches, but coaches of women's basketball. You have Camila Cardoza, great 6'8" center. Flau'jae Johnson, who plays for LSU. You have some great players on both of those squads.
Absolutely.
With 2 minutes left, there was a foul.
Right.
Flau'jae Johnson, it was an intentional foul to keep the opposition from going down the court and doing a layup. Okay.
Right.
They had a little pushing and shoving.
Mm-hmm.
It happens all the time. No big deal. Okay, Camila Cardoza comes in and knocks Flau'jae Johnson to the ground. Now, Camila is 6'8". Flau'jae Johnson is 5'10".
Right.
Okay, that's not a good look, okay? And there was some shoving, there was some jawing. Even Flau'jae's brother came out of the stands onto the court, which that's not a good thing.
No.
But at the same time, he has his sister's back, so you have to look at it both ways. But he shouldn't have been on the court.
Right.
Long story short, South Carolina wins. Mm-hmm. They win the SEC conference title. And then after the game, in her interview with ESPN, Dawn Staley apologized for what happened. She said, I apologize for my team's involvement in this. We got a little heated. Nothing was intentional, and we'll do better next time. Very classy. Kim Mulkey, on the other hand, blamed everybody but her player, who really made the big difference in that little melee. She blamed the refs. She said the refs had not been calling fouls. Said they only called 2 fouls in the fourth quarter. Well, you should be happy they didn't call fouls in the fourth quarter. How many times have we heard people complaining refs called too many fouls?
Right.
Too many fouls, too many fouls.
Right.
Okay, they don't call fouls. Now you're griping and complaining about this.
Right.
And then she had the audacity to say, she said, I wish the South Carolina player would have pushed Angel Reese. Now, Angel Reese is 6'3". Now, why? Number one, why you want to see two girls fight just for the fun of it? You know, you want to see women fight? Go see tapes of Layla Ali. Okay,
Right.
that's your best player. Number one. Number two, why are you even advocating that? Also, so there's a bigger fight.
Right.
I mean, no, you're right. She should have decked that young lady. There is no doubt about it. But don't say, well, she should have decked a bigger player. Come on now.
Right.
Be a bigger person.
Right.
Not only be a better coach, but a bigger person. I was very disappointed in that.
Yeah, absolutely. And here's the thing. If they would have called a lot of fouls, then they would have complained that the refs called a lot of fouls. You want the players to play.
Yes,
you know,
you do.
it goes all the way back to the last Super Bowl when the Chiefs won over Philadelphia and Bradway
Yeah, Bradwell, yes.
Bradwell got tugged. You know, he tugged on the jersey, which was a foul, but then they complained that he called the fouls. So, you know, you can't have it both ways. You can't have your cake and eat it too.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, and again, and before the game, if you would remember, I think it was the general manager or some executive of Philadelphia said, well, you know, the Chiefs, they hold a lot. Oh, okay. Really? Now you're trying to stoke some BS
Right.
up here. Come on.
Right.
Be better. Be better. But in women's college basketball, the top 4 seeds probably for the tournament, and Selection Sunday is Sunday. Is it both for men and women, or the women is on Monday? Sunday is for the men.
Sunday is the men's.
For the
at,
men
at
and women.
6 o'clock, I believe it's 6 o'clock Eastern. So
Okay.
so
And the women, I think, are on Monday, if I'm not mistaken.
right. So they're still playing, but like all the, you know, the SEC has already got their team, so they're not even going to play for almost 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So it's,
yeah, I mean, it's good to have rest. Some of these players are probably nursing some injuries. It's good to sit down, but you can have too much rest.
right, absolutely. And these women are not like 30-year-olds. They're 18 to 22-year-olds
Right.
that can heal up quickly, unlike us that takes us forever to
Yes,
heal up.
yes.
But you just, you know, there's a point of time, even in the NFL, if you rest too much, you don't perform as well. You're rusty, and then you turn around, you end up losing, and then you get criticized, and blah, 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 and you just keep on going.
Yeah,
So,
that is true. So I think the 4 number 1 seeds in the women's bracket will be, of course, South Carolina. Of course, they're undefeated.
Yep.
Iowa,
Iowa.
USC, and Stanford.
Yes.
And I think that's the way it's going to go. And Stanford had a great year. Their head coach is now the all-time winningest coach
Right.
in both men and women.
Yeah.
USC, again, Juju Watkins, outstanding freshman.
Yep.
And they had a lot of transfers there, a couple transfers from Ivy League schools. And because they couldn't play another season at the Ivy League school because they're graduate students, they won't let graduate students play. Why?
And
I
that's-
don't know.
Well, but that's okay. They had the rules. They've set them. They're not going to change it for anybody, and I'm perfectly okay with
I'm
that.
fine for it. So it was really great that these girls came over in the transfer portal and they got a chance to make an impact on a good team. And boy, are the Pac-12 going out with a bang, at least on the women's side.
Right. Absolutely. So, so we're near halftime on any given Sunday on KUAW, and we're trying to keep from coughing away. So we got that little frog in our throats. But we're going to take a quick break, and then when we get back, we're going to talk about the NFL and the free agency, and then we've got 2 baseball stories we're going to talk about. So we're going to take a quick break, and you are listening to Any Given Sunday on KUAW. All right, we're back for the second half of Any Given Sunday on KUAW. 816-599-6893 is the phone number. We have guest host Marvin Durant here tonight. We have George Walker running the show. We have Coach 24 Darwin Penny playing baseball out in Florida and Arizona, and I am Brian Kress, the Awesome Voice. So just real quick, Zach Edey has a shot at being the player of the year. If he does, he will be the first player to win back-to-back player of the years. In fact, win 2 player of the years since, do you know when?
In the 70s, I would guess.
Nope. 80s.
Can't remember.
Ralph Sampson, 83, 84.
Yeah.
So just a
Virginia
real
Cavalier.
Yep, real quick. So anyway, so we are doing the NFL free agency. Now, saying this, everybody has dropped players so they could free up money so they can sign new players. So every team, I believe with the exception of the Dallas Cowboys, has signed new players. They have traded for new players. They have signed new players. They have given new money to new players. So everybody has brand new teams. They have great teams. They have winning teams. They have Super Bowl teams. No, there are teams that no matter what they do, they are not going to win a playoff game. They're going to watch the Super Bowl and more than likely watch the Chiefs go back to the Super Bowl for a chance for back-to-back-to-back. Saying that, the Chiefs, I believe, won the free agency by signing the number 1 player, free agent, in Chris Jones. Now, he got almost $160 million, and that is a lot of money. And he is just turning 30 years old. So usually once you get over 30 years old, you really don't want to do that unless you're Kirk Cousins, who's 36 and keeps getting money, or you're a quarterback. Saying that, I think the Chiefs did a great job of getting Chris Jones. The Chiefs wanted Chris Jones there. Chris Jones wanted the Chiefs there, and they rewarded him for sticking it out last year and and playing on the Chiefs contract and getting his contract.
Yeah, they did an excellent job. Kudos to Brett Veach for staying on top of that. Last year was not a good year at the beginning of the year with the holdout and seeing Chris Jones watch game 1 from a suite with his agents. That wasn't a good look for either party, to be honest with you. And Brett Veach didn't want to go through that. And they are, in the phrase this year, is all in.
Yeah.
They're going all in for a three-peat. It's not just, okay, we want to better our team. We want a three-peat, and we're going to do it with as many great players as possible.
Absolutely.
So, and kudos to Patrick Mahomes for agreeing to restructure his contract, freeing up almost $22 million on the salary cap. I believe Chris Jones's contract is only going to count to about $7 million toward the salary cap this year. So they're in better shape, and obviously gives them options to go look for some people. Wide receiver, obviously they need another running back as well. But they have time. I mean, I know this week has been free agent frenzy.
Oh, absolutely.
And everybody's like, let's rush to sign these players, give them a check today, and they can go cash it tomorrow. But the Chiefs have time.
Right.
I mean, they have a lot of role players that they need to re-sign, and they've done so already. Drew Tranquill, who played excellent when Bolton was out of the lineup last year.
Yep.
They re-signed him. Deion Bush, the safety, who scored that touchdown against the Dolphins
in
overseas.
Germany.
Yes. Yep. Who else? They had Mike Pennell, great on the defensive line. Also, Tershawn Wharton. They re-signed him. So they're getting key pieces. They're making sure we have some depth.
Yep.
And so they're doing a great job. Now, can they sign L'Jarius Sneed?
And I think they can. I just think they gave him an opportunity. I think they were going to say, look, if somebody was going to give us the farm, for L'Jarius Sneed, then we were going to do it.
Right.
Now they've gotten rid of Marcus Peters, though he was a malcontent. They got rid of Charvarius Ward, who has watched the Chiefs win 2 Super Bowls for the 49ers, but they always seem to they seem to replace players as
Very
they go.
well, yes.
And here's the thing. Brett Veach has done an amazing job. Maybe he's not done 100%, but he's done 85, 90% of drafting. And that is the huge key, because you keep the team young, because the Chiefs were the second youngest team to win back-to-back Super Bowls.
Yeah, and it's tough when your first pick is number 32 in the first round, and there's a lot of different players that you can get. Again, I understand wide receiver is a priority. I understand a name that has come about as kind of the number one choice, possibly, Xavier Worthy from Texas, who just killed it at the combine with a 4.2 140. I understand Patrick likes him, but I understand his hands are pretty good, and I'm more worried about his hands
than
how fast he is.
Right.
So, but it's kind of tough, and Brett can do some wheeling and dealing. He's looking at the draft board.
Absolutely.
And so, he may be able to work a deal in the first round and could move up and get somebody who they think won't be there at 32.
Right, absolutely. So now, saying that, who do you think, outside the Chiefs, who do you think won the free agency?
I think there were 2 teams in a tie. And it's funny, both of these teams are intertwined. I'd like to think the Philadelphia Eagles did, getting Saquon Barkley. I'm shocked at the whole running back thing this year. Everybody said the running backs were dead. Nobody's going to pay them.
Right.
They got paid fairly well this year.
Yeah,
There was
they
a
did.
lot of guys moving.
Right.
That was just a great move on his part to go to Philadelphia. And the New York Giants, they figured out, okay, we don't have a quarterback in Daniel Jones. Even though Drew Lock is now a Giant now, but that's not saying much. But anyway, but they started shoring up their offensive and defensive lines. Okay, let's build this up while we figure out what we're going to do at quarterback. So once we do get a good quarterback, we'll have an offensive line that will keep them upright, and then we'll work on the defense to keep other people from scoring. Thus, we don't have to rely on our quarterback, whoever that quarterback may be. So I think those 2 teams in a tie won free agency.
Well, I will say not the Giants. I think Philadelphia did all right, but they did lose Jason Kelsey to retirement. I think that will hurt them.
Yeah, and Fletcher Cox as well. He
right,
retired.
and Fletcher Cox. So you've lost both interior linemen from both sides of the lines. And then the Giants lost their best defensive player to the Green Bay Packers, which makes Green Bay a very dangerous team. I think Green Bay did very well, but I think the Houston Texans.
Yes, they did very well. Yes.
I think they have really improved, and they still get 2 picks from the Deshaun Watson trade back in 4 years ago. So I think they're getting better and better, and I really think that they are going to be the team that Kansas City needs to worry about.
They're one of those sneaky teams, and if they play this year, I think they do. I mean, again, there's always that one game that you think you're going to win that you end up losing. I mean, they have Tommy Townsend as a punter now.
Yep.
Joe Mixon got traded to the Texans.
Yep.
Even though I would love to see him in the Chiefs uniform.
Right.
But those are 2 good acquisitions. And, C.J. Stroud's only going to get better.
Right.
He has some weapons down there. Everyone just loves DeMarco Ryans as the head coach.
Man.
Even though he's a defensive-minded coach, he has gelled quite well with the offense. So, yes, Houston, I would say Houston as well.
I'll tell you what, and the Houston Texans was a mess in management and ownership, and they have totally done a 180. So I will give them a lot of props. And I think that they will I think they're going to try to do what Cincinnati did with Joe Burrow and with their players and try to get him while C.J. Stroud is in the rookie contract.
Yes.
Because I think once Stroud goes, if he continues on playing the way he is, he's going to get an extremely large contract. I would even say it could even be near $70 to $75 million a year, which will make it a lot harder for any team that has that to try to build on their team. So I think the Houston Texans is doing very well. So saying that, in the Houston Texans, we're discussing two horrible trades. Well, at least one team enjoyed it. The other team has not. And we have Deshaun Watson, who ended up going to the Cleveland Browns, and the Cleveland Browns Houston gave Deshaun Watson to Cleveland and a draft pick, which was the fifth-round draft pick of this year, for 6 draft picks. And they still have 2 of them this year. So they had the first-round pick and the fourth-round pick in 2022, first round and third round in 23, and first round and fourth round in 24. And we had Russell Wilson, who was traded to Denver from Seattle for 8 players. Now, Seattle they got a fourth-round draft pick for Denver, and then Wilson, and then immediately signed him to a 5-year, $242 million contract. So, saying that, which one do you think was the worst trade?
I think the trade of Russell Wilson from Seattle to Denver was the worst, simply because you were getting a guy who was a Super Bowl champion, number one, a guy who was a 9-time Pro Bowler, a guy who, even though he's in his 30s, still has a lot of upside. But here's the problem. When he got there, he became a diva. He didn't endear himself to his co-workers, his other players, who was very self-centered, and he took advantage. And that was the time when the Bolin group family was selling to the Walmart group. So I think he got there while they had
In transaction.
Yes. And so basically, he kind of took advantage of the situation.
Yeah.
And basically, he fell on his face. You had a first-time head coach, and Nathaniel Hackett, and basically, he let Russell Wilson run the office there in Denver. He had his own private coach, had his own office. His wife, Sierra, which is good on the eyes, it was up there all the time, and it was just a little bit too much. On top of that, he's trying to be quirky and funny, and just kind of falling on his face, with Bronco Country, Let's Ride, and
Right.
Mr. Unlimited, and all of that stuff is going on. Get your butt out there and play. And then they let go of Hackett. Here comes Sean Payton. Sean Payton is from the Bill Parcells tree, which means no bull, no mess. Get your butt out there and play some football. And that wasn't his guy. And he made it known that wasn't his guy. That's why he got benched. That's why they released him. Yeah, they're taking it in the shorts with this contract. But, sometimes things are worth it. Look, that's Walmart money. They ain't going to miss it.
Right.
So I think that was the worst one. I think with Watson, there's still upside. Because, again, he was suspended for 6 games that first year. Last year, he was injured.
Right.
So I think, and still he has a lot left in the tank. So I think this is possibly will be a rebound year.
Right.
And that, in the long run, this will be a better situation. The Browns are going to go much further than the Broncos are going to go. And right now, the Broncos don't even have a quarterback. Well, they do, but they don't.
Right, exactly. So, I think Cleveland had the worst because they still have Deshaun Watson, and he was out in fact, I think he was out the first year of that contract.
Yes, he was.
And they signed him while he had all those issues. Well, actually, he didn't, and then right after that, he had the issues. And then when he came back, he got hurt, so he wasn't even available to play. And you had Joe Fluco, which what Coach 24 would call him.
Yes.
Joe Flacco. Had to come in and virtually bail the Cleveland Browns out, because Cleveland Browns would have not made the playoffs at all had it not been for Flacco.
Yeah.
And Cleveland or Houston has built their team a lot stronger than Cleveland has, unlike Seattle's. Now, Seattle has benefited by picking up players and stuff, but they should have been a lot stronger team. But unfortunately, they were also playing in the NFC West, where they had to deal with the Rams and the 49ers, and the 49ers just shellacked them every time they played them.
And there was well, I can't say a management issue, but Pete Carroll and management wasn't seeing eye to eye. And after he got bounced, one of the first things that he said in the press conference was a lot of the decisions were made by non-football people.
Right.
So when you hear a head coach start singing like that, there was some dissension going on in the building.
Absolutely. So, yeah, so those were two horrible trades, which was the worst since Herschel Walker got traded to Minnesota for all those picks that made Dallas the team that they were in the 90s. So now
speaking of Dallas, where are they?
I don't know. They let go of their running back. They have lost a couple of linemen. One, I believe, retired. Martin, I think, retired. So maybe they're trying to keep quiet, maybe kind of doing it to how the Chiefs do, because usually the Chiefs just sign up one person and then just try to keep the rest of their team. I like the fact that they're being low-key this time. But I would really love Coach 24's opinion, because, that's his team. Yeah. So I definitely would like to check that.
I wouldn't say that they're low-key. I'll just say it like this. They're being plain stupid, because Dak Prescott, right now his contract counts toward $59 million toward their salary cap. Okay, why haven't they restructured the contract that he could do a Mahomes and redo it and alleviate some of this? Man, I know Jerry is Mr. Big Bucks. I got that. But again, how long has it been since they were in the NFC Championship game? Like
1995.
1995. My daughter wasn't even alive then. And I was living in Florida at the time. That's a long time.
Yep.
That's a long time for any team, but for a team that is marketed and branded like the Dallas Cowboys, no, it doesn't work. And I saw his son, Stephen Jones, talking to people, and he says, hey, we're not worried. We're fine. We're all in.
Yeah, but I like Stephen Jones. I like him where he will take the team after Jerry leaves or passes away, because he is getting into that point. But saying that, since 2000, the Cowboys have had 14 playoff appearances, and they've only had 4 victories. So they are really, really struggling.
I mean, getting there is fine, but you have to win. You have to win. Yep. And they have won some horrible games in horrible fashion.
Yes, absolutely.
I mean, remember that one game when Ezekiel Elliott was the center, and he got ran over at the end of the game, and then they were trying to down the ball, and they ran out of time. I mean, it was like, Keystone Cops type of stuff.
Right, absolutely. So now we go from the NFL to Royals baseball.
Yes.
And I am wearing a proud jersey because Bo Jackson, after finally finishing playing 30 years ago, is finally in the Royals Hall of Fame. Now, he will never make the Hall of Fame in the NFL or the Major League Baseball League. I get that, because he never played enough. But saying that, he only played 5 years for the Royals. So you go, why did he make the Royals Hall of Fame? Because that man, as I say it, he was Bo freaking Jackson.
All eyes were on Kansas City when Bo played. It was either Bo was going to strike out and then break his bat over his thigh, or he was going to hit a home run 2 million miles.
Yep.
Or he was going to be in the outfield and running down a ball, climbing up a wall.
Yeah, absolutely. And my biggest memory was and I watched this live on TV, was when they played Seattle. Harold Reynolds took off running, was rounding second, and I can't remember the hitter, hit it to the wall, and Bo just grabbed it with one hand, threw it 300 feet home, right into Bob Boone's glove, and tagged him out. And Harold Reynolds said that he watched it for like 30 minutes after the thing in disbelief. And he said that the guy that was the next batter, you know, and usually they guide you, you know, stand up, go home. And he was like, okay, you're cool. And all of a sudden his eyes got wide and it was like, oh my. And he was like, get down, get down. And Bo nailed him. And then when he was playing for Chicago, he had a fly ball in right field, threw out Derek Jeter. I mean, he just took one step. You know, usually you got to bicycle kick it or, you know, at least get a good running start. He took one step, threw a bullet to the third baseman, threw out Derek Jeter at third base, and then he turned around and said, don't run on me.
Yeah, that's true. You remember the All-Star game? I think it was the 89 All-Star game.
And Rick Russell threw a pitch, and he crushed it over the center field wall in Anaheim, and he ended up being the MVP of the All-Star game.
And he had a great running catch in the outfield. So, yeah, I do remember. He was leading. He led off the game.
Yes, he did.
How would you like to be in the All-Star game and Bo Jackson's leading off? I mean, it's like, okay, I didn't sign up for this.
Yep, absolutely. So congratulations, Bo Jackson. It is amazing. So I'm wearing the jersey. I didn't want to wear this jersey tonight. I was going to wear another jersey, but I guess it was dirty, so I wasn't going to wear it. So I wore this because I have an autograph. And I met him actually in 2022. In October, and I took my son and my grandson to meet him. And so we ended up, and I was telling him this man was a phenomenal player. Bo was just calm and humble, and I was excited to meet him. And the fact that I got a group picture with my son, with my grandson, and Bo Jackson's got his hands on my grandson's shoulder, and my grandson was grinning from ear to ear. He had no idea who this guy was. And then Bo turned around and autographed that picture, and that'll be a memory that I will never forget. And I'm telling you what, Bo Jackson was a phenomenal player. I don't care how long he played. Kevin Walker from Cincinnati ended his football, which he didn't do it on purpose, because if we would have fallen the way we did, it wouldn't have hurt us at all because we didn't have tree trunks,
right.
petrified tree trunks like Bo Jackson did. But unfortunately it happened. But he was a phenomenal player, and it was about time that the Royals put him in the Hall of Fame.
Yes, indeed. A couple of things about Bo. He's from Bessemer, Alabama. And I was talking to a friend of mine a couple of weeks ago, and he was in Alabama for work. And so he was in that area, so he figured he would stop by the sports store and see could he get some Bo paraphernalia, right? No, because it's Alabama country, not Auburn country. And he couldn't even get anything for Bo in his own hometown.
Oh my goodness!
I say, wow, that shows you the divide down there between Alabama and Auburn. But back in the 80s, when I was covering the Royals for another radio station, I used to go into the locker room all the time. And Bo was very gracious to everybody who would come up to his locker. And he was never rude at all. And when it was time for him to go, he says, well, guys, I got to wrap this up. My wife's waiting on me.
Yep.
And I'm like, okay, fine, Bo, sure. No problem. I mean, but that's the way gentlemen should act, and he was always a true gentleman to the media.
Absolutely, and he keeps his personal life off there, and he is class all the way. So, so now we go from the best part to a bad part.
Yeah.
The man that they called the toothpick, UL Washington, he passed away a couple of weeks ago at the age of 70 due to cancer, which cancer sucks.
Yeah.
And so I was looking up stuff from UL Washington, and he had played from 1977 to 1990 or 1984 before he was traded to Montreal in the 85 year. So he helped the Royals lead to their first American League Cup or pennant before losing to Philadelphia 4-2. But he had two key games where he made a difference, and one was the George Brett 3-run homer. And I was watching it, and I remembered Willie Wilson. You know, he got a double, but I forgot that it was UL Washington up against Rich Gossage, and so he had Tommy John had started. And yes, for everybody, it's the Tommy John surgery and everything. But Tommy John, same guy. So he was pitching, and so after Willie Wilson hit the double, they took him out of the game and brought in Rich Gossage. And UL Washington switched from right hand, which he had been batting all game, to left hand. And his average was 15 points lower on the left side. So the Yankees thought, we got to get this guy out, because they knew who was up next.
Exactly.
The biggest Yankee killer, you know, as they say in Major League, the biggest Indian killer, you know.
Right.
But the biggest Yankee killer was George Brett. And so he fought off pitches and close calls, and then he hit a grounder up the middle over Gossage's head, and Willie Randolph grabbed it on the shortstop side and barely, and UL Washington beat it out. And I think I watched it several times, and I think Willie Randolph kind of stuttered just a hair and helped do that.
Right.
And then turned around the next pitch Gossage threw, it went into the third deck. And George Brett crushed it, and then that was it, and they ended up winning. The other one was the pine tar incident, because he was up before Brett, so he batted second. He got a hit, and then George Brett came up, hit the 2-run homer, and then the pine tar incident, and of course Billy Martin took the bat, and you know, they called him out, and George Brett went ballistic.
Yes.
And everything. So, do you know why UL Washington had a toothpick in his mouth?
No, I don't.
Because at that time, players were chewing gum and chewing tobacco.
Yeah.
Well, tobacco burned his mouth.
Oh.
So he decided to take a toothpick, and he would put it in his mouth. So they kept him from doing that.
Makes sense, because back in those days, you know, we would go into the dugouts ever so often to interview somebody, and the reek of tobacco was just horrendous.
Right.
It was terrible. A couple of things about UL Washington, and again, he was there for a couple of years when I started covering sports. You remember Gerard Dyson?
Yes.
Okay. And how his effect on the clubhouse, keeping it light and funny and everything, that was UL Washington's job.
Yeah.
He kept the locker room light, funny, always jovial, always good to the media. I mean, we didn't talk to him much because, well, he wasn't the star of the game most of the time, but he was always cordial to everyone, and certainly a very kind soul. Very loyal to his hometown, a string town, Oklahoma, and just a good person. And so certainly he will be missed. And a very good double play combo partner with Frank White.
And do you know that Frank White and UL Washington were the first black shortstop, second base combo in the American League?
Yes.
So that was also historic. and he became a instructor after his playing days, and he instructed a guy in Boston, and I think he plays pretty good now. It's a man named Mookie Betts.
Mookie, who is now playing shortstop, by the way,
Uh-huh.
not having much success so far in spring training,
Right.
but he came up. He played shortstop, I think, in his early years in baseball and professional ball. He got converted to second base.
Right.
Then, of course, he went to the outfield and
Right.
became a 6-time Gold Glover.
Right.
But they're having some issues at shortstop with the Dodgers and that pitcher that they paid $400 million for. He's having issues. Otani he's not pitching.
He's not
He's
pitching
hitting.
at all this year.
He's only had 2 home runs so
Uh-huh.
far, but 14 at bats.
Right.
But I digress. But Mookie is a good one. He's just having some trouble right now, but he hasn't played shortstop in a million years. So
Yeah, absolutely. But it was because of UL Washington's training. So with that, we are at the end of Any Given Sunday on KUAW, and I thank Marvin Duran again for coming in onto the show.
No problem.
And had a great show. We rocked it out again. Looking forward to having Coach 24 back, but I'm glad that you came in. And we have George Walker, who always runs the show. He does awesome. And I am Brian Kress, the awesome voice.
Oh, I have one other thing, if I may, sir.
No, you may.
Okay.
You may.
Okay. Upcoming on my podcast, On the Record, next week, my guest will be Jan Handley, former head coach of the Kansas City Soul, noted high school and college basketball coach. We're going to talk about the March Madness.
Absolutely. And just real quick, I just want to say hi to my mom and dad. They have really struggled this year. My mom has been a pillar of strength, and I just want to say that I love them both very, very, very much. And with that, I am Brian Kress, the awesome voice. Be awesome, not angry, and you guys have yourself a phenomenal sports weekend.